December 2025. Cities across North America are holding emergency meetings about their recycling programs, and what is coming out should make every person who has dutifully sorted their plastics for the past 2 decades absolutely furious. The entire recycling system that we have been told saves the planet is collapsing right now. Toronto just became the latest domino to fall. The city's Dufferin transfer station is operating at 40% below capacity, but Toronto is not alone. Philadelphia is burning half its recyclables because there is no market for them. Memphis suspended its recycling program entirely for 6 months in 2024. Bakersfield, California told residents to just throw plastic in the garbage because the city cannot afford to process it anymore. This is not a Toronto problem. This is the entire North American recycling system imploding. Here is what you need to understand about where your recycling actually goes. According to EPA data and municipal reports across the continent, 25 to 30% of everything you put in your recycling bin ends up in landfills anyway. That number was 8 to 10% in 2015. It has tripled in a decade. Those glass bottles you carefully rinse and sort, in most cities they are crushed and used as landfill cover because the market for recycled glass basically does not exist. Cities will not tell you this directly, but the data is sitting right there in their quarterly waste management reports. Recycling processors are losing money on every ton they handle, and they are demanding that cities pay dramatically more. In Toronto, processors want rates to jump from $185 per ton to $310 per ton, a 67% increase. In Seattle, rates went from $120 per ton to $285 per ton in just 3 years. Denver is facing similar increases. Portland renegotiated contracts that doubled their recycling costs. Cities do not have this money in their budgets, which means either services get cut or property taxes go up. The contamination crisis is universal. The average contamination rate across North American recycling programs is now 25%. When residents toss pizza boxes soaked in grease, plastic bags that jam sorting machines, and food containers that have not been rinsed into their bins, every contaminated load costs extra money. When contamination rates hit 30%, processors start rejecting entire truckloads. Most cities are either at that threshold or past it. Plastics are the biggest lie in the entire system. You see those recycling symbols on plastic containers with numbers 1 through 7? Most municipalities can actually recycle only numbers 1 and 2, and even then only if they are clean. Numbers 3 through 7 go straight to landfill in the majority of cities, but almost no city clearly communicates this to residents. Americans and Canadians have been diligently recycling yogurt containers and takeout containers for decades, thinking they are helping the environment. They are not. Most of those items cannot be recycled in municipal systems, and they never could be. Let us talk about the numbers behind this collapse. The United States generates about 35 million tons of plastic waste annually. According to the EPA, only 5 to 6% of it actually gets recycled, period. The rest goes to landfills or incinerators. Canada is slightly better at around 9%, but that is still pathetic. For 40 years, we have been told to recycle plastic. It turns out, we have been throwing it away with extra steps. Here is what caused this crisis. China's national sword policy in 2018 destroyed everything. For decades, China had been buying about 50% of the world's recycled plastics and paper. They took our waste, processed it, and turned it into new products. In 2018, China announced it would no longer accept contaminated loads, and its contamination standard was impossibly strict. Overnight, the global recycling market lost its biggest buyer. The price collapse was immediate and devastating. Mixed paper that used to sell for $100 per ton crashed to $5 per ton. Some plastics now have negative value, meaning cities have to pay someone to take them away. The entire economic model of municipal recycling was built on being able to sell sorted materials to China. When that disappeared, the whole house of cards fell. Southeast Asian countries like Malaysia, Vietnam, and Thailand tried to absorb the world's recycling after China bowed out. It lasted about 2 years before they were completely overwhelmed. These countries started rejecting contaminated shipments and implementing their own import restrictions. By 2020, there was essentially no viable international market for low-grade recyclables. North American cities were suddenly stuck with mountains of sorted plastic and paper that nobody wanted. The human cost is mounting across the continent. The recycling industry employs about 140,000 people in the United States alone. Sorting facility workers, truck drivers, and processors are losing their jobs as facilities shut down. These are not corporate positions. These are people making $15 to $25 an hour doing physically demanding work. When a city like Memphis suspends its program, hundreds of people suddenly have no income. Environmental groups are watching their decades of advocacy collapse in real time. The Environmental Protection Agency's goal was 50% recycling rates by 2030. The country is currently at 32%, and that number is dropping, not rising. Every ton of recyclable material that goes to landfill instead of being processed produces methane as it decomposes. Methane is 25 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. Climate action plans across North America assumed recycling rates would increase. They are doing the opposite. Landfill capacity is becoming a crisis. The average American produces 4.5 pounds of trash per day. Multiply that by 330 million people, and you see the scale of the problem. New York ships its garbage to Pennsylvania, Ohio, and South Carolina. Seattle sends waste to Oregon. Los Angeles trucks garbage to Arizona and Nevada. When recycling programs collapse and all that material gets rerouted to landfills, we are accelerating toward a capacity crisis that most cities are completely unprepared to handle. The equipment at recycling facilities across North America is ancient and breaking down. Most sorting machinery is 15 to 25 years old. These systems run 12 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. They break constantly. Replacement parts for older equipment are not manufactured anymore. Maintenance costs have doubled or tripled since 2020. Building new state-of-the-art facilities costs $100 to $200 million each. Most cities do not have that kind of money. The public education campaigns were all lies, and people are starting to realize it. Cities spent millions telling residents that recycling saves the planet, that every bottle makes a difference, that we are building a sustainable future. It was marketing, not truth. The system was always fragile, always dependent on foreign buyers who could disappear at any moment. Municipal governments knew this, but nobody wanted to have the hard conversation. The recycling symbol itself is part of the problem. That little triangle with arrows that appears on basically everything. It was created by the plastics industry in the 1980s to make people feel good about buying plastic products. It was brilliant marketing. The symbol implies that the product is recyclable or will be recycled, but that is not what it means. It just indicates what type of plastic it is. Most items with that symbol cannot be recycled in standard municipal programs. The plastics industry knew this and used the symbol anyway to keep people buying plastic guilt-free. Here is the uncomfortable truth that nobody in government wants to say out loud. The recycling system as we know it is over. It worked marginally well for about 30 years when China was buying our waste. But that era is finished. The economics do not work anymore. The infrastructure is failing, and there is no realistic path to fixing it at the scale required. Cities are going to start quietly redirecting recycling bins to landfills and hoping residents do not notice. Some already are. December 2025. The great recycling experiment is collapsing across North America. Toronto, Philadelphia, Memphis, Bakersfield, and dozens of other cities are watching their programs fail in real time. Residents who spent decades carefully sorting their waste are discovering that much of their effort was theater. The bins that symbolized environmental responsibility are becoming expensive props in a system that no longer functions. When you put that plastic bottle in the recycling bin tomorrow, understand that there is a significant chance it is going to a landfill. When you carefully separate your cardboard and rinse your containers, know that contamination from your neighbors might send the entire truckload to the dump anyway. The system is broken, and the people who told you it worked have known it was broken for years. This is happening in your city right now, whether you know it or not. If you want to know where your recycling actually goes, start asking your city council members direct questions. Request the waste management reports. Look at the contamination rates and processing costs. The answers will probably make you angry, and they should. If this breakdown opened your eyes to what is really happening with your trash, please subscribe. Municipal infrastructure failures like this are accelerating across the continent, and mainstream media is not covering them honestly. What do you think the solution is? Should we force manufacturers to pay for recycling systems, ban certain plastics entirely, or just admit recycling was never going to work at scale? Let me know in the comments.